Hi, everyone. This is Joe Gupser from Martin and Associates. Thank you for attending our eRequester webinar. I wanted to let everyone know that this webinar is being recorded and it will be sent to all attendees at the end of the session, and it will also be available out on our website as well. If you have any questions during the webinar, if you could please use the chat box to enter your questions in, and we'll make sure to get those answered by the end of the webinar for you. And at this time, I would like to turn it over to Eric at eRequester to join us, or to lead us through the rest of the webinar. Thank you.
Thank you, Joe. I first want to say thank you to Martin and Associates, Joe and Betsy. I really appreciate you guys having this webinar for us. We've been partners for years, and we're really excited about this webinar today. My name is Eric Osborne. I am the channel manager and software sales consultant for eRequester. I've been with the company for just over a year, and I'm in charge of building partnerships with our partners that sell different ERP systems. We also have on the line is Hyung. He will be coming in a little bit later to kind of show you guys a little bit more about eRequester. So I hope everybody's having a great day. I'm excited to be here. So let's just hop right in. So today we're going to talk about eRequester. eRequester has been developing spend management software for just under 20 years. It's designed to help small and mid-sized enterprises save money on purchasing, managing compliance while accelerating their accounting. We've been working with Sage, Microsoft Dynamics products, as well as Acumatica for years. And so if anybody has any needs in those areas or looking for solutions that integrates with those different systems, eRequester is a great solution for you. eRequester is utilized by over 850 companies across the globe with more than 100,000 users, and that number is growing every day, happy to say. So today, we're going to talk, I'm going to take the first 20 minutes, and we're going to talk a little bit about approval workflow and eRequester in general. We're going to be discussing some of the issues companies are facing with manual and paper-based purchasing, discuss some of the benefits you can receive by automating your approval workflow. After I present this presentation, Hyung will then give you a brief overview on how easy it is to set up an approval routing structure in eRequester, as well as some of the key features of the solution based around approval workflow and things like that. At the end, as well as during the demo, you can always, anytime during this webinar, feel free to chat your questions. And at the end, we'll talk about those. Hyung and I will have a conversation with you to talk a little bit about the questions and answer any questions that you guys have had that come up throughout this process. All right. I want to start with a study done by Arden Partners. They wanted to find out what really makes the best-in-class finance and AP department. They surveyed over 200 accounts payables and finance people in procurement in different departments, and they were asked, what are the challenges that you're facing, and how can you make adjustments to improve efficiencies in their department? The response was pretty alarming. The results were that 43% of companies were still highly manual and paper-driven. This shows that 86 out of the 200 people surveyed respondents cannot accurately track their spending, check the status of requisitions, and ensure compliance with approval routing. So what is this really telling us? It tells us that procurement and AP process is really time-consuming and inefficient. That the majority of employees in these departments is spent on manual, time-consuming processes, and all the time has costs to the association. All this time has a certain cost to the organization. That's really a minimum value when it comes to productivity and getting the most out of each employee. Based on this, there is still a lot of employees out there buried in wasteful processes, which raise the probability of human error and potential fraud, which sometimes drives the finance and AP departments insane. In these positions, these organizations tend to tax their existing employees and think that the real solution is by adding more people to this problem. Should they automate these processes with a best-in-class spend management software? It would allow them to get more accountability and streamline the process, alleviating more time for the employees to do more strategic work. So what's really holding companies back? As a manager of a department, we find that it's outdated thinking or the fear of change that's usually holding organizations back from creating efficiencies that could help each team member be more effective and strategic in their roles. If this is true, you don't have to worry about it. Not all hope is lost. There is a disconnect between the cost of switching to a software-based system, then somebody needs to put together a strong case for it. Because of the benefits far outweigh the risks of holding your company back, by automating it, we can actually streamline these processes and really save everybody a lot of time. eRequester software, I went too far. eRequester software automates the process, providing visibility and efficiencies and control over request purchases, payments for invoices. eRequester automates approval workflow engine. An easy-to-use web interface allows you to streamline the process and get things approved in a rapid, timely manner. When you lay out all the steps from request all the way to paperless recording or inputting into the AP the voucher into one of your ERP systems, when you lay it all out, you can see that there could easily be some bottlenecks and issues that can come up when you have a manual or paper-based requisitioning system. Some person within the departments have to actually babysit this process to make sure it's moving through each stage, which could always be really time-consuming. Our study shows that just by automating the purchasing process, a company can reduce the average cost of their PO by about 49%. More on that later. Typically, we get a call from someone in procurement or finance or AP department. They're usually frustrated because they realize that they're wasting so much time with their manual process. They're taking work home on the weekends. In some cases, they even take a full day in a week just to do manual entry, while the real work is just piling up. They take a look at some common issues with the manual paper-based approval workflow process and how they can be remedied. We'll also explore today some of the benefits of implementing a software-based approval system for your internal purchases. So, how do you get more time when you implement a spend management solution? There are basically three main things that we want to focus on today that can help you, or when you're thinking about a manual processes, there are about three things that really bog down the process. There's a lot more, but today we're just going to focus on three main things. The first thing we're going to focus on is fragmented approval process. If you have a purchasing process or a decentralized purchasing office in multiple cities, regions, or countries, and your purchasing manager has to get approval through roundabout methods that crisscross the globe, then you belong to this group. This group has to endure the arduous process of justifying a purchase, outline the selection process in multiple communications, and then repeating it all every level until it can be approved. This is something that happens across the thing. You send out a request. You have to get it approved. This is a manual process, so it's usually an email, right? It goes to someone. It's going to sit in their inbox. If for some reason they're not getting it, how do you know when they're checking their email box? How do you know when they're going to get this thing? You want to get your PO cut. You want to get it approved as quickly as possible. What we found out in a fragmented approval process is it could take up to about 2 weeks to get a PO approved, which could be really taxing when it comes down to it. And on the back end, when it comes to an invoice, this fragmented approval process can also take weeks to get an actual invoice approved to be paid, which could ultimately cost the company a lot of money on the back end in fees, as well as late fees, where they could be getting a lot of savings if they're paying things on time. Number 2 is lost or stalled requisitions. Anyone who had to deal with a manual paper process or review multiple email threads in a spreadsheet know that this is the number 1 reason for lost or stalled requisitions. Paper requests are prone to loss because of their own spreadsheets. They become unwieldy, causing delays because someone has to manually read every line and manually check each line, which results in delays, and ultimately it opens the door for human error. Me being in my department, I'm not a very detailed person, and I always have to, I'm always appreciative to accountants and people in the finance and procurement department because they tend to send things back to me for me to make changes in those things. By automating that process, it'll be extremely easy for someone to be able to find out where that requisition is and get it approved quickly. Another big thing in a manual process is, what do you do if someone's out of office? If you send it to someone and you get their out of office, but you have to get this approved, what happens? Timely approvals can become completely derailed when the approver's is traveling or out on vacation. The effectiveness stops the requisition in its tracks. Worse, it might cause a requester to go around the normal approval process if they need to get something done. This causes what we call rogue spending or unauthorized spending. Studies have shown that about 54% of employees are guilty of rogue spending, which tend to come up when there's bottlenecks in your system. If you are anything like me and you need to get something out to a client or you need to get something right away, I will go around and get this done to make it. I believe in the process of getting it done and then saying I'm sorry later. Some of the other challenges that we find in a paper-based requisition system is you have old and slow process, which we call it approved bottlenecks. You don't have a lot of lack of budget insights, manual purchase orders, uncontrolled rogue spending, frustrated staff, potential missing data, lost approvals, slow expense reimbursements, out of compliance, and just never enough time. Overall, the daily tasks and daily challenges of your daily tasks slows down your productivity. So now that we've kind of identified some of the main reasons why you might want to think about approval, workflow, and automating, some of the other benefits that you may want to think about is like you get to reduction of paper, manual processes, reduction of the paper in that process, utilizing smart workflow to manage your approval processes, powerful reporting capabilities, supplier management, and then you also get electronic auditing, which you'll get to see a little bit later during the demo. So let's talk about a little bit of benefits now. So now you know that in a manual paper process, you're going to be spending a lot of time, which you're probably already doing right now, spend a lot of time chasing paper, making sure that you're trying to get things approved in a timely manner. You are bugging people, making sure that they're checking their email and getting back to you. Someone has to babysit that process throughout. So you have someone that's over it, that's watching it at all times. And that person, if they didn't have to do that, potentially they could be doing some more strategic. So what are some of the benefits? One, with the you get automated approval routing. The number 1 benefit is the ease of use when it comes to an automated approval workflow. You submit your request and that's it. Your automation software cuts it out, out the laborious paper forms, spreadsheets, and impossible to make sense email threads, and does all the heavy lifting for you. It's like a digital copy of your existing manual rules that never misses or skips over a step, right? So before you have a software like this implemented, you talk to your Martin Associates. They work with us, and we set up the approval routing structure so that depending on how you want the routing to be, whether it be $500 to go to this person, $1,000 to go to this person, it automatically will do that for you. So once you send that, if a user sends a request, all of the process is taken out of it. It automatically routes it to everyone it needs to, and if anyone skips over a step or it needs to get anyone, it'll continue to notify those people until they make that approval. Not only is it does it go through the workflow, if for some reason someone's out of office or anything else like that, you can put in proxy, which we'll talk about here also. So it takes the guesswork out, right? When you are a user and you are putting a request to something, a lot of times, most of us who are at an organization, we don't know exactly about GL codes and GL codes and what department goes to what and all this stuff, which ultimately ends up putting a lot of strain on the procurement department or AP department in the back end. They have to go in and find those things and add them to the PO or the piece of paper later. Having an automated system, it takes all the guesswork out. What's the status of the requisition? Who approved the purchase? Is this purchase within budget? There are common questions that are time-consuming to answer without automation. Approval workflow software puts critical visibility into your organization's spend management right at your fingertips. You know the status of every requisition and all the relevant data in seconds. You can quickly see where your requisition at and where it's at in relation to your budget. Lastly, it compiles data into custom reports from overview to the granular details. So within that PO, you have everything you need, from the high-level view of everything, including the notes, including you could drill down to the most detailed levels of your GL codes, departments, and things like that. So it gives you, everything is right there for you, right there at your fingertips, and gives you a lot more flexibility. And then, as I mentioned, proxy and out-of-office delegation. So in a manual process, this is a huge problem. So by automating this, right, so that if someone goes to send a request and you happen to be out of the office, you can have a proxy approver approve that right away. We can set it up where you can actually have multiple approvers. So it gives you a lot of flexibility when people are out of the office. Not only that, if for some reason, because it's a web-based solution, that if for some reason they're just out and they're on a meeting or something like that, they can still actually approve that request in a timely manner from their phone or from their tablet. Intelligent software gives you the ability to assign a proxy approver or out-of-office delegate to manage approvals in your absence. It keeps the request moving through the system without you having to think about it. It's already set up. When that person hit their out of office, it automatically routes it to the next person. So how can this help your organization in the long run? So by having an automated system, you're going to reduce your purchasing cycle by 30%, saving you a lot of time there. You're going to reduce the average cost of your PO by 49%. And then the last thing, because you're getting accountability on every single thing that is purchased within your organization, you're going to get about a 40% at least reduction in rogue spend, which ultimately 40% reduction in rogue spend is something that hits your bottom line right away. So I want to look at this from another angle. And this is from I'm going to go through this really quickly because one of the things that at eRequester we advocate is we advocate for the employees in the department, which means that we don't want you to not hire people. We want to be able to make them more effective. But as a manager, when you are growing your organization, you can save a lot of time and money, as well as even positions when it comes to automation software. One of our customers at Materials Manager, we were able to start with the system with eRequester with only 10 users, and it has easily scaled to us to almost 400. It allows us to save at least 4 to 5 jobs in purchasing. So having an automated system gives you an opportunity to scale by utilizing 1 or 2 employees that in the automation system that can allow you to, the automation gives you an ability to have your department work a lot more efficiently and account for some of those additional positions that potentially you can't afford. So what kind of cost savings ultimately, if you are looking at saving potentially 4 to 5 positions in that AP or purchasing department? Basically, you're looking at a potential $356,000, a little bit over $356,000 a year, potentially in salary savings if you were to use the automated software. So at this point, I'm really excited to say that working with eRequester, you can reduce your purchase cycle by 30%, reduce your cost for POs by 49%, and you can save your labor and improve your productivity. At this point, what I want to do is turn it over to Hyung. I'm going to skip through some of this stuff. Turn it over to Hyung, and he's going to walk you through a little bit about eRequester. Thank you for your time.
All right. Thank you, Eric. And I hope everyone is enjoying your day today. Now I'm actually going to show you how eRequester works. So you're currently looking at the eRequester login screen. So each user will have their own username and password. And first, today, so I'll be changing my roles and changing my hats a little bit here. Right now, I'm going to log in as an administrator to show you how easy it is to set up your automated workflows. So as Eric mentioned, eRequester is known for ease of use and how easy it is to use the system. So as you can see, I'm logged in as a buyer or an admin, and only administrators have access to this administration section. There are 2 tabs here. And the first tab, the system administration, this is where you can actually manage all your users, departments, your company, and approval routings. And when we install eRequester for your company, these are the first things that we set up with you. And I'm not going to go through everything, but based on Eric's presentation, I'm only going to show you a few key things that we want to cover today. And one of that was the approval routing, how easy it is to automate your workflow. And the most basic approval workflow or the routing rule that you set up is by dollar amounts, by hierarchy. So by department, you can set up these hierarchical routing levels where the requester might not have any amount that they can approve. So a requester can request things to buy through the system, and then it will first go to their manager, who is the second level approver with the authority to approve up to $1,000, for example. So it is very easy to set up these hierarchies, and it's easy to edit this level. So if you need to change the amounts, per role or the level, you can simply change the amount, for example, to 2,000, and then you have just changed that. And also it's very easy to add more levels by clicking add level and add other levels of approvers. So that's where you actually set up your hierarchies for your departmental approvals. And also what I want to point out is that after you do that, and if there are some exceptions to your approval routing, for example, in this company, when a request is submitted, those standard requests will go through their departmental approval. That's what this route to default approval means. That's all you need to do. And then the system will automatically route all the requests through their departmental approvals. If there are some exceptions, for example, for your IT request or computer-related request, then you can set up a rule that says when a request type is an IT or computer-related request, you will first have to go through an IT role, for example, and a role can have multiple people in it, so that anyone in the IT department can first review this request, and then it will go to the supervisor, for example. So as you can see, it is very easy to set up your standard rules as well as any exception to those rules. So I'm not going to go too deep in today's presentations, but I hope you see how easy it is to set up your workflow and approval routings in the system. Also, Eric mentioned about what happens if an approver is out of office. So let's say Bill is an approver, and if he's going to be out of the office, then he can simply click this view profile, and this is you, Bill. As you can see, I'm logged in as Bill. And I can simply click this out of office box, and then I can designate who my delegate is for the approvals when I'm out of the office. So you can simply choose a delegate. Or if you forget to do that, maybe an administrator or someone else in your company with the right authority can come in and actually designate your delegate. So it is very easy to set up your out of office delegates in the system. And also the system allows proxy approvers if none of that works. With that, I think what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to log out as the administrator or the buyer. And now I'm going to walk through a couple of very simple examples to show you how easy it is to use the system and how efficient and powerful it is. So now I'm actually going to change my hat and logging in as a user named Joe. He's an initiator or requester with his username and password. And when I log into my company, I'll be taken to my dashboard under my request tab. And depending on your rule or what modules you have in your company, you might see some different tabs across the top right now, but everyone will have this My Request tab. And this is the dashboard where you can see all your transactions in progress. So when you create a new request, it will start out in the status of incomplete. And once you submit the request, it will turn to the status of waiting. And the system shows you exactly who you are waiting on at the moment. So you have a very good visibility in terms of who you're waiting on. And as you can see, some of these are waiting for the manager, Bob, but this one is waiting on the second level approver, Jane, director. So depending on how many levels of approvers or different exceptions to your workflow, you will know exactly who you are waiting on for that request type that you've submitted. And once you create a new request, the system will automatically assign a new request number. So these are requisition numbers automatically assigned from the system for tracking purpose. And you can name your request whatever you want to give it a friendly reference. So some of these transactions are for monthly supplies, some is for computer supply or equipment or CapEx. So you can set up different workflows or approval routing based on different types of requests. So for example, the standard request might just go through your departmental approvals, whereas the IT request or computer-related requests will go through your IT department for approval, as I've shown you in that approval routing section of the system. So now I'm ready to actually walk through a couple of examples. The first one, I'm actually going to use a template. So the system allows setting up all kinds of different templates, and this would be the easiest way to do your new request. So I'm just going to open up a template for monthly supplies here. And when I open this template, as you can see, this template has all these items predefined with lots of information like the cost, which vendor you're going to buy from, what department you are in, and what type of request it is. So all you have to do as a user is go down here, click copy, and then the system will turn that template into a new request. And as you can see, the system just assigned the new request number, 5839, for tracking purpose. And all you have to do as a user is just enter the quantities of items that you are requesting in this new transaction. So I'm just going to enter a few quantity, and if you know the cost, you can enter them at this time, or it can be entered by a purchaser later on if you don't know the cost at the moment. So I'm just going to enter a couple of items here, and when I click save and continue, you will see that this new request, 5839, just has those two items that I've just entered the quantity and the cost. So this is a $430 request from Joe. And another nice thing here is that eRequester is not a document management system, but you can actually attach all the important documents to your transaction. So you can go to a folder on your machine, and then you can attach a quotation or product specification, whatever it is that you want to associate with this transaction. You can upload it, and when you click done, the screen will refresh, and as you can see, this item just has a PDF document attached. So you can attach as many documents as you need, and when everything looks good, you can click save and continue, and the system will automatically determine who will need to approve this request based on the rules you've set up in your company, as I've shown you in that administration section. So since this is only a $430 request from Joe in this department, it only requires the manager, Bob's, approval, because he has up to $2,000 authority level, as we changed that from 1,000 to 2,000 in that example. So that's all you have to do as a requester. And then once you submit this request, it will go through that approval routing automatically. And as you can see, this new request has been submitted for approval, and Bob, the manager, will get an email notification shortly. It goes through the email server, so it takes a few seconds to arrive. I'll show that to you once it arrives. But when Bob receives that email, he can log in as himself. So now I'm changing my head again to be the manager, Bob, with his username and password. And when Bob, the manager, logs in, he'll be taken directly to that transaction. There's a hyperlink in the email, and when he clicks the hyperlink and logs in, he will come directly to that transaction, the new request, 5839, and he can review the items, including the attachment. And as an approver, he has few options. Of course, he can approve it or reject with a comment, or he can request more info from other people in the system, or he can send this back to the requester and require change. Or if you give your approvers the right to change the transaction themselves, they can simply click edit and change whatever is on this transaction. If you don't want them to change anything, then this edit button will not show up here. So at this time, he has reviewed and Bob is good with this, so he will just put a comment here. This is fine. And when he clicks approve, the system will approve this transaction. And since he's the only approver in this case, the system will automatically generate the PO if that's how you want the process to work. But before I look at the PO, this is the email that Bob just received. So Bob received an email asking for his approval. You can even attach those documents in the email if you want. And our email approval module will let the approvers simply click approve, reject, or request more info from the email instead of logging into the system. So they can easily approve or reject directly from the email. And you can see that this is a $430 request from Joe from this department for these items. So he has some details in the email. But again, if he wants to log into the system, instead of making a decision from the email, he can click this hyperlink. And when he logs in, that's when he goes to that transaction he just approved it from the system. And as I mentioned, one of the options is to automatically generate the PO once the final approver approves the transaction. So when I click this PO number, you will see that this is from Martin and Associates, and you can put your logo there. And this is a new PO 118. And if eRequester is integrated with your ERP system, whether it's Sage 100, 500, Dynamics GP, these PO numbers will be automatically picked from your ERP PO module and then put into this approved purchase order form. And there's some header information, including the vendor, the building shipping, and those 2 items. And if you want to send out the PO from eRequester, you can simply click this email button, and then the system will automatically populate the vendor's email address from your ERP system's contact list. So you don't even have to put in the type in the email address. And then once you click send, a purchase order email will be sent to the vendor. And that's at very high level is eRequester's requisition to PO process. And that was an example using a template. Now I'm quickly going to log in as Joe, a requester again, and show you how easy it is to do a new request from scratch. Instead of using a template, you can simply click this new request, and the system will walk you through these different steps to do your new request. So as I mentioned, you can name your request whatever you want, give it a friendly reference. So if you are requesting some computers, you can name your request computer, and maybe it will go through a different approval routing since this is an IT request compared to a standard request from your department. And when you click save and continue, the second step will be you can identify the vendor or the GL account or the item. Now, depending on your company, if your end users don't know the vendor or the GL accounts, maybe we can hide this field or default it to a certain GL account so that the end user doesn't have to worry about entering a GL account. And as I mentioned, if they know the vendor, they can start typing, and the system will automatically pull up the vendors from your ERP system. Or if you don't know the vendor, you can simply click this unlisted vendor, and then later on, a purchaser or manager can enter a correct vendor during the later stage of this transaction. And then eRequester supports both listed items as well as unlisted items. If you have items set up in your ERP, then you can actually look up those items from your ERP in real time and select an item from there, as I've done here. When you choose a listed item, the system will automatically populate the item number, the description, and the GL account or the vendor, all the associated information. So all the user will have to do is just enter the quantity of the item he's requesting. The system also supports unlisted items where you will actually have to enter the items in free form. That's the second step. And when you're all done, click Save and Continue. And the next step is, where do you want those items shipped? And you can set up multiple locations if you have multiple locations in your company. But this will basically default to the user or the department location. And when you click Save and Continue, the next step is the review screen. If you remember, when I used a template example, basically you are skipping those steps. And when you copy a template, you just enter the quantities and you come directly to this screen. So that's the only difference. And from here on, basically this will go through the same kind of process as I've shown you in the other example. And looks like the IT request routing rule has not been set up correctly. So there's a routing error. But anyway, from here on, you will go through the same kind of approval routing and the process as I've shown you in the first example. So I hope I've shown you at very high level how easy it is to use eRequester as a requester or an administrator or approver. I'm going to pause at this time and see if there's any questions. And I'm going to hand it over to Eric and let him handle the questions. Thank you.
Okay, do we have any questions in the chat?
There are no questions in the chat at this time. Again, if you have any questions, please feel free to type it in the chat, or you can unmute yourself and ask.
Wow, it sounds like we did a great job of explaining everything.
It doesn't look like there's going to be any questions, so I think we can go ahead and wrap it up.
Okay, well, I want to say thank you all for taking your time to spend some time to find out some more information about eRequester. I hope that if you need anything from us, just reach out to Joe or anyone at Martin Associates, and we'll be happy to show you a more detailed demo of the system and talk to you a little bit about your requirements and how we can actually save you a lot of time and money when it comes to your purchasing process. Have a great day, and we're excited to work with you in the future.